one of the things that we pushed ourselves on was something we call our brand promise. So our brand promise at Docusign is now bringing agreements to life. Before we got to logos and colors, it was really spending time with what does bringing agreements to life mean? What do we want it to mean moving forward?
Well, if you were looking for a crash course in how to do a massive rebrand in 4 months, you've come to the right place. This episode, I talk with Carla Weis, the global head of brand and creative for a little company you may have heard of called Docusign. And in this episode, Carla walks us through the entire process she went through in rebranding Docusign from the eSignature brand to the intelligent agreement management platform, and everything that went into that process, really from the beginning of the catalyst for doing the rebrand to the challenges of evolving as a globally recognized brand where you have established terminology and looks and built-in equity to the things that you've already been recognized for, the intense 4-month period of actually doing the work to figure out what the new logo is, what the new messaging is, what the new positioning is, the new category, the identity, everything that went into that, how to train and prepare internally the entire company worldwide for this new evolution, and how to launch it effectively so that it's not just a nice new makeover for the website, but that everyone pays attention in a meaningful way. And this feels, not just feels, but it is a significant moment for the company. This was an amazing masterclass for how to do this right. You could tell already from the start that she talks from a place of superb wisdom and confidence in what she's doing and how to do it right. I can't wait for you to soak up every single word. This is obviously recorded back when they did the rebrand, a little bit after that, but it's still just as relevant now than it ever was. This is simply how to do it. So without further ado, please enjoy the masterclass in the Docusign rebrand with Carla Weis. All right, Carla, welcome to the podcast. This has been a long time coming for me, at least. Been really excited to have you. So happy that you're here.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Ari. It's awesome to be here. Really excited to spend this time together.
Awesome. So just for everyone out there, Carla Weis is the head of brand and creative at Docusign, a little company that everyone on the planet uses to sign contracts and agreements and everything. But maybe, share a little bit of how you got to where you are today, what your career path looked like.
Yeah, that's great. I'm happy to. Prior to my life at Docusign as head of brand and creative, I spent the majority of my career in agency settings, small agencies that delivered some amazing work for clients like Stripe and BlackRock and others. And yeah, I came into Docusign about 4 years ago when we were just building out a new brand and creative team essentially from scratch. And we've spent the last 4 years just building an amazing team at Docusign, doing some great work in-house and working with some amazing agency partners. So yeah, it's been quite a journey from agency life to now corporate citizen, but it's one I dearly love.
Awesome. Yeah, we definitely share that in common a bit. I was in the agency world for a few years, working on brand storytelling and brand repositioning as the head of brand messaging for an agency actually in Tel Aviv, which is where I stumbled into Island, who needed a new name, and that's how I joined the club over there. Pretty.
Oh wow!
A common story that I know, but awesome. So I would love to dive as deep as you're willing to dive with me on this massive project that I wouldn't say you've done because you're probably still in the middle of doing, which is the rebrand of the Docusign brand. Sometimes I think building a brand from scratch is this exciting, exhilarating kind of something from nothing process. And yet it can almost in some ways be harder or even more exhilarating to reimagine something from scratch, right? To do a rebrand. And that's what you guys did. And I'm wondering, just to start to open up the conversation, like, what is ground zero of a rebrand? What is the moment like when there's a decision to do this? Is there some sort of event or some sort of milestone? What is the catalyst for a project like this?
I think for us at Docusign, it was really clear that the business strategy was changing big time. And I really believe that if you're going to do a true rebrand, it needs to be based in, a sound business strategy and a sound rationale for why you're doing it. Other times, it might make sense to just give a visual refresh to your brand. But I categorize those as two very different things. A visual refresh where, maybe you're tweaking colors or fonts or something like that. And that can be an awesome thing to do to modernize a business or a brand that's, maybe a little old. But for us, it was much bigger than that because we set apart really doing a couple things at once. One was inventing a new category that moved Docusign out of just the eSignature space that we pioneered and championed for the last 20 years, but creating a new category that we call intelligent agreement management. And then with that came the opportunity to say, okay, well, does our brand identity reflect what we want to achieve? Not just from the past 20 years with eSignature, but actually what do we want to achieve over the next 20 years to come? And so for us, we really started at ground zero, looking at the foundations of what the brand stood for and how could we take it into the future with something that we felt really excited by and clearly differentiated. This is not the same Docusign that, many people know. It's a fresh, it's, a renewed technology. And so for us, it was a really critical choice to say, hey, we're changing the company strategy. Let's change the brand along with it.
That's great. And I think this is like a fundamental, important piece here to understand on a couple levels. Number one, like you said, brand refreshes happen all the time. Nowadays, the speed of things, it's probably around 18 to 24 months. Something's got to, you got to just a new fresh skin, right? But you're talking about a business moment where there is a new category that needs to be built. There's a new strategy that the company is adopting. And the brand really is meant to tell the story of the company. It is not meant to be kind of the nice artwork that goes in the front of the store. It's meant to really reveal what's inside. And if what's inside changed, then the brand, it's almost like not a nice to have. The brand needs to change. The brand needs to serve that new mission, so to speak. So that's really great. So who's involved in that initial discussion? What is that room like?
I think it's different for every company as they go through this transition, but we had a really aggressive timeline. We did the whole rebrand in roughly about 4 months, which was incredibly fast. Therefore, because of that fast timeline, we actually kept the core team and the core decision makers incredibly tight and small because we knew we had so much to get done so quickly. And so the early conversations, the very early ones are like, they literally are like, are we even going to do this? Is this the right thing to do? That was essentially my boss, our president of growth, Robert Chatwani, and myself, and then our CEO, Alan Tikason. And, at first we were debating, would we just do a refresh or would we do the full rebrand? And it very quickly dawned on us that it was the time to do the rebrand itself. For those of the listeners who might know the legacy Docusign brand of the previous 20 years, that brand, both the visual and verbal identity, were really based in sign and, e-signatures. And that's, of course, what most of the world knows us for. But like I said earlier, we're pivoting into this newer, bigger space. And the visual brand that was based in sign had to come along with it. So along the journey, we also kept our decision makers really small. And this is advice I would give to anyone that, as small as possible, but being very responsible. So again, our main decision makers were myself, our president of growth, and our CEO. And we kept our full ELT team in the loop and in the know along the way. And we clearly communicated dates. I will say that. That was one thing we did really well was we said, hey, we want to hit this milestone in April. That means decisions need to be made, pencils down by February so we can hit that date. And really, the leadership at Docusign came together as a united team to make that happen.
I appreciate, as a head of brand, that what you pulled off is really kind of unheard of, in the sense of everyone knowing their role. Being able to commit to dates means you probably have people in the room compromising for the greater good. You have people not in the room who understand that their role isn't to make decisions, but really to kind of salute the process and contribute in other ways. These are all things that are not well understood and well executed everywhere. And that's really important. Like, getting those things down, you probably are dead on arrival if you can't set up that right infrastructure for the rebrand. So it sounds like you really honed in on the way this needs to go in order to pull off, especially in the tight deadline.
We identified really early on that the date we wanted to launch was April 11th. And we identified that the go or no-go date to hit was actually Valentine's Day, so about 2 months in advance. And that was like literally the day where the logo had to be decided, the strategy had to be decided, the colors, et cetera, so that we could hit that April date. And you're right, the broader team at Docusign really embraced a teamwork mentality. And, I'm sure there are people who maybe didn't like certain choices, but it wasn't even a problem because we were so committed to making this happen and launching in April, which, by the way, we launched at our customer conference. And
I was about to ask.
Yeah. Yeah, a customer conference or some big event that you have coming up is such a good catalyst to not only celebrate with your customer base or your prospect base, but really to rally your entire company behind. And, we anticipate we're going to keep doing that at Docusign. We're going to use these moments of customer events, and we call them tentpoles, but big tentpole moments to really celebrate the brand in big and unique ways. And like I said, it also just gets your internal resources all rowing in the same direction, which is really amazing.
So do I smell a Docusign wrap in the future, like Canva?
Oh gosh, if I put that back to our company strategy, probably not. But one of the things we did, yeah. One of the good things we did in our rebrand activity, many of the listeners here are probably familiar with something called brand archetypes. And brand archetypes are, for us, it was a really important tool because we were sort of in this moment of saying, like, who do we want to be? How do we want to show up? And we actually debated archetypes like jester. And, a wrap, I think, is like a jester type of brand archetype. And a brand can choose that. I think that's totally fine for them to choose. But we chose 4 archetypes at Docusign to embody. They're sage, hero, ruler, and magician. And so you can clearly see how that maps back to not only the brand, but also our product strategy. We want to be a sage. We want to show you the way, teach you how to do things with your agreements. Magician, so many people know Docusign is really easy, really intuitive to use. You just go in and click a couple of buttons. And it feels like magic. And so those are our core archetypes. And so we're using it now as a tool to teach, a company of 7,000 people how to make decisions every single day, which is really incredible. And that wasn't something we had in our tool belt before the rebrand.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I've been like bookmarking things in my head since like 5 minutes ago. I totally want to get back to the way the brand is saluted and celebrated internally with employees and customers. I think that's such an important part. And it's easy to think like, oh, this is all about, how we show up in public. But really, it often has to do with how well we embody it and feel good about it internally. I want to get back to that. The one interesting thing, just to go back to the beginning of the creative process, once you decided, okay, April 11th, that means pens down in February. That means we need to start somewhere and have some sort of direction for where to go. I thought something interesting you mentioned was like, sometimes brands are the victims of their own success. Like, you were so good at owning e-signing, that it's like, do we keep it? Do we leave it? Are we leaving brand equity on the table? If we keep it, are we able to reimagine ourselves enough? Because we might just be bringing along some legacy. I kind of like to think of it like Friends, like the actors of Friends couldn't really act in anything else because they were always going to be like Joey and Monica, they were too good, right? So like, what was that decision like, or those initial creative discussions of like, okay, are we brand new? How do we get new, but bring with us what we need to at the same time?
Yeah, the legacy. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, brand legacy is super important to us at Docusign, of course. We're a 21 and a half year old business. And that's a long time in tech, especially. And we've had over, the number ticks up every day, but we've had over 1 billion signers around the world. And we don't take that for granted. That is a lot of brand equity. And, it was my responsibility to not be flippant with that brand equity, but also to still move the brand forward. And one of my personal favorite products that I use at, almost every day in my life is Tide, laundry detergent. I mean, something incredibly simple. But when you think back to old Tide from, say, the 80s, even the 70s, it was, that dusty powder that you had to scoop out of the cardboard box, and, the dust would fly up and hit your face. And Tide today in 2024 is Tide pods that you just quickly toss into your laundry. And yet the Tide brand that entire time has stood for cleanliness, quality, ethical responsibility with their Tide cold water. It's something I really respect. And so it was something, that we thought a lot about. And even before we started thinking about visual identity at all, we really put pen to paper on strategy. And one of the things that we pushed ourselves on was something we call our brand promise. And our brand promise was a single statement, just a few short words that we could say internally or externally that have layers to them and it has richness and meaning and depth behind it. So our brand promise at Docusign is now bringing agreements to life. And when you think of the 21 years that we've been in business, that is a true brand promise that has always been true for us over the past 21 years. Whether you were a sender of a document or a signer of that agreement, we were bringing agreements to your life. But now we can take that a step further and say bringing agreements to life means taking agreements out of the static, dark PDF days that just sat there, in a file system, to now a living, breathing document that you can connect data to, that you can connect your other business systems to, and, extract value from those agreements. So for us, like I said, it was, even before we got to logos and colors, it was really spending time with what does bringing agreements to life mean? What do we want it to mean moving forward?
Yeah, and this is so important. I mean, the whole idea of brand isn't a logo has been like said over and over again, especially on LinkedIn every day if you follow brand people, right? But
Yep.
despite people knowing that kind of conceptually, it is still hard, I find, for many business leaders to wrap their head around the fact that the brand is a highly strategic thing that goes hand in hand with the company's mission, with the company's and the product, and like what business goals they have. It's not this like art project on the side. It's really, what are the ideals? What is our goal as a company? And then how do we embody that in all the ways that don't have to do with actually selling it, but portraying it, creating perception. And that obviously has to do with the words and the visuals and the emotions involved. But it really just starts with human discussions around what we're trying to do. I do think that people outside of the world of brand don't necessarily know that that's the starting point. They probably think, okay, green or purple, like that, because that's what they see on the outside.
For sure. And, I would say this was something that we actually, for probably, I don't know, maybe 5 to 10 days max, we did actually struggle with a little bit at the very, very beginning. We spent some time playing around with visual identity, and nothing was feeling right at all at the first time I was looking at work that the team was producing, and it was like, no, this isn't it. But I, as the leader, had a responsibility to direct those designers and tell them why it wasn't working, which caused me to reflect back on, like, do I know the why? Have I gone deep enough to say, why a purple, why a green, why a orange isn't the right color for a DocuSign? And our colors were chosen really intentionally, in fact, because of that strategy that we set out to build at the beginning.
The two
And so,
colors
yeah, I mean,
blending, that idea.
yeah, the two colors
Nice.
blending and using what we call poppy, which is a bright orangey red, which is about bringing agreements to life. So you have this nice, beautiful cobalt, and then you have the poppy, and so for us, it was there's a little bit of trial and error, and you have to go through that. There's no other substitute for it. You have to put stuff on paper. It's going to be really wrong. You might create 100 concepts and throw away 99, and that's okay because you need to get to that one. That's the right one.
I was just talking to some of the marketing leaders on my team. We were kind of reflecting on how strategy is really about what we don't do than what we do. It's almost like, the way the sculpture is like you're taking away everything that isn't the sculpture in order to make the sculpture. And that is really, the process that you're describing quite well, which is in order to know what you are, you need to know why the things you aren't don't make sense for you. You need to have that clear definition of orange isn't us, right? Like a hot green isn't us, and here's why. And I don't just mean colors; those are just easy examples. But that's a great way of like helping understand what this process is like peeling away the things that aren't us, so we arrive at us. That's great. So, what was that moment like when you kind of arrived at this is it, this is something? I could kind of see an early version of what we're going to go. Take me into that room, if you will.
I would say my first, spidey senses kind of going off around we were landing in the right territory was when we landed on that brand promise, bringing agreements to life. We tried, 20, 25 versions of a brand promise, some that were more classic B2B, some that were more esoteric. And so when we landed on bringing agreements to life, I was like, okay, that's it. Like I knew it in my gut. And then also, I would say when we landed on the archetypes that I mentioned earlier, and that, like you said, it is about removing the excess and what we were not going to be moving forward. So a good example is in the brand archetype wheel, one of the archetypes is what's called an everyman. And I would categorize the old Docusign as an everyman, right? It's literally for any signer around the world. And that's still true. That hasn't changed. But we weren't going to intentionally adopt it as an archetype moving forward. So those were the two big, milestones, I would say, hitting each one of those that led us into better decision-making around the visual brand and even the verbal brand. When you think about what does it mean to be a sage or a ruler or a magician, that gives you so much runway to identify the verbal brand, the copy, the tone, the, stylistic choices you're going to make. For us, even how we're going to do content marketing moving forward. Those were sort of the big aha moments or the big unlocks that really let the teams move forward with speed at that point. And then I would also say, the first couple times we saw the logo, I didn't think it was going to be the one, actually. I really didn't. There was a contender that is not the logo we launched that I personally liked just a little more. But I love the logo that we launched and, but that is the process, right? You go through, any creatives listening to this podcast will know you have to kill your darlings. You have to be okay with saying no to certain things that maybe you really liked, but for whatever reason weren't right for the business.
Wow, yeah, that's great. And I remember seeing, was it like a documentary about the Instagram rebrand, and they had like 500 different versions of that little box.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like the gradient, was like darker on top and lighter on the bottom. The white dot was on the left or on the right. And it was like mind numbing to see every, little detail they had to go through to get there. Wow. You did mention that you built a new category for this, big move that you were making, intelligent agreement management.
Yep.
Categories are big, scary things. And if anyone thinks otherwise, then they're probably not building a category, even if they think they are, because you need to create a whole new language. You need to throw out SEO because you're trying to say something no one else is saying, right? Or no one is even looking for. What was that process like? Was there a debate whether to do it or not? Was that like an obvious move? What were the decisions made around that phrase?
One of my favorite analogies I learned along the way from some of our partner agencies were, the brand, which is my remit and my charter, and the category are intrinsically intertwined. but they are definitely not the same thing. And I think that's a really easy trap to fall into, is trying to to treat the brand and a category as kind of the same thing. And I would definitely not recommend doing that. That's a big challenge, in fact. And when you're working with people maybe in marketing or product that don't understand category or brand, then you get into even a stickier or more fraught situation. So the analogy that we learned that I think is really helpful in teaching this is the category is the frozen foods aisle at the grocery store. But within that frozen foods aisle, there are many brands, and they are not all the same, and they all have different, names and labels and value propositions and whatnot. And so we were really setting out to both create the frozen foods aisle of what agreements will be, and also the brand within that frozen foods aisle. So the simple analogy that I think helps, but it's, like I said, it's really easy to start getting the two correlated or conflated with each other, and it's not always the case. So we had to wrestle with that a little bit. Then secondarily, we have some amazing marketers, product marketers, et cetera, who did a lot of work behind the scenes to tell the category story, not just to customers, of course, yes, definitely to customers and prospects, but to the press, to industry analysts, to just general, the investors, of course. So other populations bigger than just prospects and customers alone. And so we did a lot of work behind the scenes to make that happen.
Awesome. It's, if I'm getting what you're saying correctly, it sounds like the category process was kind of adjacent to this rebrand project. Like, was it done with a different team or with different stakeholders?
I would say they were almost parallel. The category had to come a little bit first, but I'm talking like days and weeks ahead, not, quarters or years. We did start working on category creation back in the fall of 2023. It's almost a year ago now. And we did work with an external agency who's done this before and helped us. Stakeholder-wise, a lot of the same stakeholders, ELT, marketing, product marketing especially, but, fairly similar group. And it was, like I said, it was probably like a few steps ahead of brand, but not by much. And I think that was awesome. I wouldn't actually change that. If I think it was too far ahead, then the brand wouldn't have evolved quickly enough to match the new category vision. But even though in the process behind the scenes, it was a couple steps ahead, it's still all launched on the same day. So to the public, it was really, the same. It was the same day. New brand, new Docusign, new category, all of it happening sort of all at once, which, I think looking back on it now is a lot of work, no doubt. But I wouldn't change that approach at all. I think it was really amazing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think also, like, you can't do it the other way around where you're trying to evolve the brand while still thinking, what is our category? There has to be that anchor of like, and depending on how new or kind of what angle that category is taking in the market, I'm sure that, that has to have a heavily influence on, if we're just like kind of a tiny bit different than what we are, but a radically different messaging or look, there has to be this parallel process for how we arrive at the right brand that would go around that new category. It almost sounds like everything went too smooth. Like, what was there? What was that? Was there a moment where like, was there a crisis? Not that you need to reveal any secrets, but like, what was a challenge or a roadblock that seemed to kind of stop everything in its tracks, and how did you overcome it?
I don't want to make it sound like it was easy, because it definitely wasn't. It definitely wasn't. But what did make it easier is that we had a really clear vision of what we wanted to do and to launch. We stayed very true to that vision along the way, that we wanted the brand to feel really vibrant, really set up Docusign for the next many years to come. And I will tell you this much for anyone listening who's thinking about doing a rebrand, the number one resource that I recommend anyone having is an amazing project manager with you. I had an amazing PM who was my right hand through all of it. Her name's Jess. She's incredible. And she helped me really put rigor around what could have been an unwieldy process. And internally, I think one of the things we learned early on that, we had to do for sure is we had to get the full company on board. It couldn't just be something that our internal tiny team launched and nobody else knew about. So we built out what we call a brand ambassador program. And it was essentially 1 or 2 people from each major function around the company. I think we had maybe 150 to 200 brand ambassadors in total. And they would get special sneak peeks. They would get special read-ins. They would get communication about what to expect and what's coming down the road so that they could be ready for that. And frankly, that was all Jess. She made that happen. She did such a good job. And that allowed the whole company, even if they couldn't see the logo while it's a work in progress or understand new colors are coming or what, those simple things, they could at least feel a part of it so that when, April 11th comes and we ask them to change the logo in, their domain, they were ready for that. And I will say this, the one thing that we did that was, I don't think I would have changed it, but it was a little bit challenging, was we had to hold everything so quiet and tight and close to the chest because we didn't want to accidentally leak anything to the public. And so the company didn't even see the new branding until 1 week before the public.
Wow.
Because we just wanted to make such a big splash. And 7,000 people, that's really hard to do. But yeah. So we got on stage 1 week before, we got on a company all hands and said, here's the new brand. And luckily we had, such amazing buy-in. The whole company was really excited and onboarded to embrace this new change. And then really the day of pushing it out, one of my most proud moments is, the teams got ready. They were up at 4 a.m. the day of launch in the office. And they had a punch list, essentially, of just knocking down every single property that needed to get an update. And we had a couple that had some hiccups, but for the most part, we definitely hit every major property that Docusign has.
That was going to be my very next topic to hit of launch for a 20-year-old company, to think of everything you would need to update.
Yeah.
A blog from 11 years ago, right? Anything that went out there, and maybe just even bringing it back to the simplest version of that question, okay, so now the next thing on the line is launch.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah.
What is the playbook for that in your mind?
When we enrolled our brand ambassadors, one of the first things we asked them to do was to create an audit of materials. And this audit was interesting because it's easy to, again, kind of default to, hey, it's a visual brand update, it's logos, it's colors, okay, great. But it was bigger than that. Our audit was much bigger than that because, again, we were creating a new category and we were saying a new message from Docusign. And so we really had to not only audit for visual identity, but we had to audit the message all up. And so it could have been, like you said, an old white paper, an old blog, and it wasn't even, is it off brand visually, but is it even saying the right thing anymore? And so if it wasn't, then we would deprecate it altogether. We would just say, okay, this piece of content doesn't exist anymore. And that can feel, when you're in a corporate environment, that can feel a little challenging because people don't really want to throw away stuff. You want to keep it around, but
sure.
It was an exercise in pruning, just, all up. And then we also prioritized the most heavy, important, weighty content. And then we left some things to lower priority. Anything internal facing, for example, that we only see inside of Docusign and the public doesn't see, that was usually at the bottom of the list. And then, of course, the homepage is the number one thing we were focused on updating. We made global changes to websites in terms of navigation. Our web engineering team was really incredible because they went in and essentially restyled the whole site, CSS-wise, colors and fonts and things like that. And so that was really amazing. But yeah, we had a collective effort around the audit amongst, those couple hundred brand ambassadors. And then we prioritized the heck out of this gigantic list. And it was, it was pretty manual. There's not a great way to automate this. It was actually just a spreadsheet, that became pretty gnarly. And, we would have healthy debates about, was something higher priority than another thing? But that kept us all focused on, the big goal there.
Sure. Wow. That's having that brand ambassador piece really is something that I'm going to remember from this quite a lot, because it does sound like without that, there's just, you can't get to the scale of what you need to refresh or to rebrand in the way that you want. You need kind of your people, out and around to help, even though they're not necessarily in the rebranding process. And I think that's an unlock for me for how to make sure, you get those things, you get the auditing and okay, here's the list that we need to have, and here's the buy-in that we need to have. Here's, all those things kind of lined up so that when you need to start turning things on, it's organized for you. That's really great.
One other tip I will just say to any of the listeners is we loaded everything into a digital asset manager, and we made that publicly available to the company. So if you needed the logo file to go update a Word doc template or a customer-facing invoice, in some system, people could go and get it themselves. So that was a huge removal of bottlenecks as well.
That's really smart. Yeah, that makes sense, especially at the scale of 7,000 people. And on that, you mentioned, and again, this is also something that is often misunderstood or not understood well enough, that the rebrand isn't just swap the logos. It's we talk differently.
Mm-hmm.
We don't bring up these topics. This is our perspective on this, these industry, subjects. To me, that influences how your sales team writes their next email, how your newsletter, looks, how your sales deck looks, not just marketing materials, but really the way everyone processes Docusign, information and gets ready to communicate it. What's the prep like? Is it materials? Is there like cheat sheets you're giving out? Is it all hands that you're kind of walking everyone through? What is the process of getting everyone on board?
Great question.
Not just celebrating the brand, but actually internalizing it so they could start using it themselves.
Yeah, so we did a few things around that, and there's actually a lot more to do. It's one of those things that actually is never done, I think. We built out a really robust guidelines document. We have a public-facing version and we have an internal-facing version. Many of the listeners here may have seen our new website called brand.docusign.com, which is really all about this new brand. You can go learn about it and read it and touch it and explore. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Yeah. That's one of my all-time favorite pieces. And then
I shared that with my brand WhatsApp group.
Good.
Me and my brand buddies. I'm like, did you see this? OMG, right? So that was a moment for sure. Yeah, sorry, continue.
No, it's great. I love that people love it. It gives me such joy. But we also held internal, Zoom sessions we literally just did like a rebrand AMA where I would just get online and literally anyone could come on and ask me any questions they had about the rebrand. I think that was pretty well received and helpful. And then we're actually working now, like I said, this is never done. We're working now to embed brand training into our new hire onboarding process, which I think is going to be a huge unlock. So any new employee who joins Docusign will have a course at the beginning of their tenure at Docusign to learn about the brand. And we'll keep it very light level. We'll keep it, just like the things you need to know and understand, and we'll keep it engaging. It probably won't be an incredible deep dive, but those kinds of things really go a long way in getting people excited. And everybody's coming from another company or, where they spoke a different language and they said things differently. And so, we have to teach people how Docusign is going to speak about its brand.
Yeah, absolutely. I did a similar thing where I kind of recorded a workshop going through like, here's our archetype, here's our tone of voice, here's how we look in the wild, here's the way we send emails things and post online. Yeah. And what's funny is people in the company that I had never assumed would be interested were like hitting me up with like our R&D engineers were like, dude, this is so cool. I have like 11 questions for you. Could we chat?
That's awesome.
Right. And there is a certain kind of magic to like people understanding that this isn't just like a marketing tool. It's really a way of connecting ourselves to what we're doing, like of who we are. And I think that's why people maybe don't realize how much it matters to everyone throughout the company. Like this 100%. Is what they represent. So yeah,
it really matters. And that I think is some of the most joyous work is Of course, we do this every day for our customer base, but engaging employees is just like, it warms your heart. It's really amazing.
That's awesome. I really appreciate it. I mean, we got us right up to the launch. I must say this B2B brands typically underwhelm me. I'm going to be honest in terms of just the thoughtfulness that goes into it. And when I saw this rebrand, and like I said, I saw that brand.docusign.com. I'm like, I have to hear the story. I have to meet the person that did this. And it's really special work. And I'm really, congratulations on that, especially in only 4 months. And I hope it serves as inspiration for other B2Bs to get on this whole branding thing and really take the time to do it well.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Ari. That means a lot. And we're very grateful to be stewards of this amazing brand. At the end of the day, that's what it's all about. So thank you.
Awesome. I appreciate your time, Carla. Hope we can do this again soon.
Perfect. Yeah. Talk to you soon.